You know, the 2023 game RoboCop Rogue City was a huge surprise hit. Well, now its standalone expansion, Unfinished Business, is out and it is definitely stirring up a lot of debate. The big question everyone seems to be asking is pretty simple: is more of the same actually a good thing? Let's break down what people are saying.
And yeah, that's really the core of it. Almost every single review boils down to this one question. Does the more of the same approach actually work here, or does it just show the cracks in the formula? The developer, Teon, they clearly decided not to reinvent the wheel, and because of that, critics are sharply divided.
All right, first up, let's talk story. Unfinished Business is a standalone tale that kicks off right after the main game. There's a brutal attack on RoboCop's precinct, and that sends him on a direct path for revenge, leading him to one single, massive new location, the OmniTower.
Now, the structure of the game drew a ton of comparisons to action flicks like The Raid or Dread, and it's easy to see why. By locking all the action inside this one skyscraper, it creates this incredibly tight, relentless pace. You're just always pushing forward, climbing higher, with almost no downtime at all.
This is a really deliberate change from the semi-open areas we saw in the base game. Here, the focus is almost 100% on combat. It's just this non-stop gauntlet of action. And honestly, for players who thought the original game's pacing was a little slow, this change was seen as a huge improvement.
Okay, let's get into the gameplay, because this is where we find that core conflict that critics kept pointing out, the incredible feeling of power clashing with a very, very deliberate and sometimes frustrating rigidity.
First off, the game absolutely nails the power fantasy of being RoboCop. The classic Auto 9 pistol is still so satisfying to use, and the combat is just as brutal as you'd want from the movies. They've added some cool new things too, like a cryo cannon for freezing and shattering enemies, and some really creative takedowns using the environment. And people loved the key moments that mix things up, like playing as Alex Murphy or getting to control a destructive ED-29.
But here's the trade-off for all that power: rigidity. You're a walking tank, so your movement is slow and heavy. There's no jumping, no cover system. You just march forward and absorb an insane amount of damage. And while that's completely faithful to the character, a lot of critics found it just plain tedious, especially during any backtracking. It's an authentic choice for sure, but one that really split the room.
Now we got to talk about the technical side of things. This was a major point of discussion in pretty much every review out there, and it's where the game's AA budget really shows.
First, let's give credit where it's due. The atmosphere is incredible. Visually, sonically, it just perfectly captures the vibe of the 1987 film. From the heavy thud of RoboCop's footsteps to the dystopian world, and of course, having Peter Weller himself return to voice the character, the immersion is absolutely top-notch.
But that immersion is constantly threatening to break because of all the technical issues. As Video Gamer put it, you're going to see everything from bodies that fly through the air unnaturally to prompts that don't work. This is the jank that people talk about, and it really undermines what is otherwise a great presentation.
And this isn't just little minor stuff. We're talking ragdoll physics that send bodies flying into the stratosphere. We're talking about key textures not loading during cutscenes, really bad lip syncing, and pretty significant frame rate drops right when the action gets intense. Some reviewers even ran into bugs that completely stopped their progress and forced them to reload an old save.
So, let's put it all together. Based on what all the critics are saying, what are the clear pros and cons of Unfinished Business?
On the plus side, it's an undeniably authentic RoboCop experience. The combat is brutal and satisfying, and the whole vibe is just pure fan service in the best possible way. The more focused, tighter pacing was also a big win for many. But on the other side of the coin, the lack of polish and constant glitches are a major issue. The core gameplay, while fun, can get repetitive in that tower setting, and the side missions and characters, pretty forgettable.
So that brings us to the final question. With such a clear split between what works and what doesn't, who is the ideal player for this game?
The consensus here is crystal clear. Unfinished Business is a love letter to the fans. If you love the first game and you're a diehard fan of the '87 movie, you're probably going to find a lot to enjoy here. It's for players who care more about that authentic power fantasy and direct, explosive fun than they do about technical perfection. Your enjoyment is going to be directly proportional to your tolerance for jank.
And the scores reflect this perfectly. Look at that. A solid 50% of reviews landed right in that mixed category. You know, the 6s and 7s that see the fun, but also the frustration. Then you've got a smaller group that loved it, flaws and all, and another group that just couldn't ignore those flaws.
It's the very definition of a divisive game.
In the end, Unfinished Business isn't a revolution. It's a throwback. It's messy, it's unpolished, but it is fiercely dedicated to its source material. It's betting that for the right kind of player, that brutal authenticity is way more important than technical perfection. So the final question isn't just about this one game. In an era of polished but sometimes soulless blockbusters, is a flawed but authentic tribute exactly what you're looking for?